You're an interesting man, Mr. Scamander. Just like your suitcase, I think there's much more to you than meets the eye. Kicked out of Hogwarts for endangering human life with a beast.
Hello, and welcome to Film Rant. So we have the first movie in the inevitable Harry Potter Extended Universe franchise, and quite frankly, I couldn't be more chuffed about it. Mainly because Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is directed by my boy David Yates, who directed the best Harry Potter movies, and probably the best one, Deathly Hallows Part 2. Now I want to talk about... Whoa, I'll have none of that shit. Yeah, you can say you prefer Prisoner of Azkaban, that's usually the more popular one, but sue me, I like Deathly Hallows Part 2 better than the rest. Anyway, I'm a huge fan of all the Harry Potter movies, so I was excited to see what they did with the extended universe. When I found out it was Fantastic Beasts, I was a little confused, but it's got a good crew and a good cast, and the story was written by J.K. Rowling herself, so it doesn't get more promising than that. So, does Fantastic Beasts maintain the magic? Well, I'm going to talk about spoilers, so operate away from here if you don't want anything spoiled. So let's talk about our main man, Newt Scamander, played by Eddie Redmayne. Well, I thought he was a fantastic beast himself. Redmayne portrays a very tame, interesting and charming man, which I think suits the character very well. Not only that, but Redmayne's mannerisms and speech patterns were definitely finely crafted and well put together. He really makes the character his. As for his character's authenticity, I can't really say. I've not read the Fantastic Beasts handbook. I've read the Harry Potter books and I can't remember how he is on those or if he even turns up. I read them a while back. Anyway, Scamander is a great leading character and there's nothing about him that's done badly. Scamander's partner in crime is Tina, played by Catherine Waterston. Tina is an interesting character. She's an ex-Auror who was handed a magical P45 because she attacked a muggle, or as this movie calls them, No-Maj, which is a fucking terrible word, but I'll not pick on that too much. She's still loyal to the American ministry though, so she's torn between helping Scamander and getting him into trouble. In the end, she does both. Tina was never really given much focus in the movie, but I feel it did just enough to keep her interesting, and I look forward to seeing more of her in future iterations of the franchise. It's more interesting that the movie never formally made her the love interest of Scamander until the very end, when he's about to leave and they share a heartfelt goodbye. The guy who does get a love interest though is Jacob Kowalski, played by Dan Fogler. Now Jacob is... hang on, wait a minute, is that the guy from Fanboys? Jesus, he's gone up in the world, who knew? Anyway, Jacob is just about as lovable as Scamander himself. He's a bit dorky, he's good comic relief at times, and you sort of root for him to become a full member of the wizarding community, which the film totally sets up. It's great to watch his friendship with Scamander develop, and he has some charming chemistry with Tina's sister Queenie, played by... Fine Frenzy? Weird name, sounds like something I'd go into after a parking fine, but whatever. The ending gives you the impression that Jacob's story may be done, but that last scene in the bakery tells us there's more of it to come, and I couldn't be happier. As for villains, Fantastic Beasts sort of has two of them. The first is Percival Graves, played by Colin Farrell. He's a shady guy who is the head of magical security hunting for a powerful child known as an Obscurus who turns out to be the second villain. Graves isn't given much screen time and we're never really totally sure if he's actually the bad guy. The people he seems to pick on in the movie are also made out to be villains. The only things we get for a lot of the movie to tell us he's a villain are his merciless actions towards the heroes and the way he dresses. I mean, he wears very dark clothes. However, when he says to execute Scamander and Tina, you could assume it's simply part of his job since they quite heavily broke the law. He's only really a villain in the sense that he doesn't seem to care much about human life or how he treats people. His motivation is sort of relatable though. He wants to try and get wizards out of hiding and into a more open world with muggles again. He feels that the wizarding world is being oppressed and he just wants to feel free. It's an understandable motivation. He doesn't really go to any extreme lengths to achieve it either. It's not like he's decided he's going to kill a load of muggles to get what he wants. His plan never really comes off, so we're never quite sure what he wanted to do, only that it was going to involve Credence, who turns out to be the Obscurus. Now, Credence is just as interesting a villain. He's not given much screen time, but what we do learn about him is that he's an orphaned lad who gets beaten by his adopted mother whenever he does the slightest thing wrong. He wants to break free of her reign and seeks solace in Graves. Graves promises to make Credence a wizard if he finds this powerful child and brings him to Graves. It was a great reveal at the end that Credence was the powerful child and that he's just a scared young lad. He decides, fuck it, I'm done with the world and wreaks havoc on New York for a bit. It's like a teenager lashing out, but in a very extreme way. Scamander then tries to tame him, but he ends up being destroyed by a troop of Aurors. I felt a bit sad when he was killed. This guy was just forced into a corner and lashed out like a wild animal, which perfectly plays into the main theme of the movie, beasts. It was great to see two villains who I could actually empathise with. It's rare you get one villain like that in a movie, but to get two was a real treat. It was such a change from the very black and white contrast of Voldemort and Harry Potter. In terms of the script, I want to congratulate David Yates for not relying too heavily on the legacy of Harry Potter. While the movie definitely takes a lot of liberties in assuming you've seen the Harry Potter movies, I don't feel like it relied on it to be successful. There's plot elements that may seem a bit strange, such as apparating, how certain spells work and certain characters' jobs, but I think it does a good enough job of explaining them. Fantastic Beasts doesn't rely on throwing in a lot of Harry Potter characters. I know it's a different time period, but it would have been too easy to make Dumbledore some kind of main character, or have one of the characters be Harry Potter's granddad or something. Gladly, it didn't. All of the characters are new characters who we don't know about, and it was nice getting to know a completely new bunch of people. Dumbledore is mentioned, but only once, and it seems to be acting as a setup to a plot strand in the second movie. Surprisingly, Fantastic Beasts never uses the Harry Potter theme except at the very start when the Warner Brothers logo was in the clouds, which was also great. The only elements of Harry Potter Fantastic Beasts seem to use is its look and tone, which is all it should use. It establishes it's in the same universe just by its visuals, but the story still remains very independent. It's the perfect extended universe movie. The only issue I could possibly think of is that if you haven't seen Harry Potter movies, you might not really be that interested in this. I was very interested because I loved seeing different plots take place in the wizarding world, but I'm not above saying that the main plot, catching the beasts, was a bit flat. It never really grabbed me, but I was still interested in the movie because of the subplot. I was very interested in the wizarding politics going on with Graves and the Madam President. I loved seeing the social impact of wizards, such as how there was some kind of Muggle KKK group who wanted the wizards dead. The subplots were a very welcomed addition to the wizarding world storylines. Harry Potter is very centralised around him. It was nice to see plots about the wizarding world at large and outside of Hogwarts. The plot about Scamander catching his runaway beasts, while quite entertaining at times, wasn't gripping enough to keep you completely hooked for 2 hours, I don't think. Without the subplot, this movie would have bored me after about an hour or so. But it does have those subplots, and I fucking love them. It made the movie so much more grown up than the Harry Potter movies. And that can be said for the movie overall. David Yates is the director who really introduced the dark side and gritty look to the Harry Potter movies. Alfonso Cuarón definitely went dark in Prisoner of Azkaban, but David Yates' movies almost look like social realist films. They're dimly lit, unsaturated and grimy. His only restriction was that he was locked down to the story of Harry Potter, which is definitely quite mature in a lot of places, but ultimately it's a story for kids, so there's some tame plot elements that take place. I love his Potter movies regardless though, they're all brilliant. Just to be clear, I'm not criticising the Harry Potter movies here, I love them, so any of you fanboys or fangirls out there, don't give me grief because I'm one too. I'm on your side. But I have to say, Fantastic Beasts introduces noticeably more adult themes and plot lines. It also straight up shows a guy being slammed into the ground to death from about 70 feet high, as well as having a scene where Scamander and Tina are about to be executed in this grim looking electric chair room. There's some wonderful lightheartedness in Fantastic Beasts, but I really loved it when it got a bit more mature. Don't get me wrong, this movie still appeals to kids I think, but I just think it's a little bit more grown up than the Harry Potter storyline, and David Yates is the perfect guy to be in charge of that. I want to say I loved how the movie ended with regards to Kowalski. The movie sets up this predictable ending of him being kept in the wizarding world by Scamander having him live in his briefcase. We learn how Kowalski hates his job, he doesn't seem to have any family, and he appears to be very good at handling the vast amount of creatures in Scamander's case. So when the ending comes and they're waiting on the steps for him to walk out into the Obliviate Rain, it would have been all too easy for the movie to have Scamander do the "wait, I have an idea" thing. Thankfully though, the movie went on the more emotional route. I loved how Queenie kissed him as he stepped out into the rain and kept the kiss going as his memory faded. Then there's a shot where he opens his eyes and in front of him is an empty stairwell. That was brilliant. I wanted it to go down exactly like that. Yeah, the movie hints at the end that maybe he hasn't forgotten everything, but I was never under the pretense that he was going to be gone for good. They could have just as easily have kidnapped him again in the second movie if they needed him, but I really loved this scene. It was done brilliantly. There's a couple of nice touches in the movie I want to talk about too, both come at the end. The first is how Scamander handles Credence and talks him down from his rage. He has him crouched on the train tracks, so Scamander crouches down and goes to his level. Then after a while he asks if he can approach Credence and begins to slowly walk over. This is not dissimilar to how zoologists and nature people tame and get to know wild beasts. Scamander is treating Credence as a wild beast and uses the only method he knows to calm him down. I love that parallel between the main theme of the movie and the villain. The other thing is where the end battle is actually set, in an underground station. This is symbolic of the wizarding community at large. Throughout the movie, Graves often complains at how the wizarding community is oppressed and how they've been driven underground. So to have them fight the climactic battle at an underground station was a fantastic bit of writing. You can tell that came from J.K. Rowling. The movie does contain some nice comedic moments. I don't think that all the jokes necessarily land well, but a good chunk of them do. I love the scene where Scamander was trying to entice the female hippo rhino-like thing that was in season by performing some kind of mating dance with her. It was quirky enough to get a few laughs from the audience, myself included. Then she spots Kowalski and starts chasing after him, trying to pull him out of a tree. There's also the whole storyline with the Niffler, who seems to be a right arsehole to catch. The Niffler had lots of personality and was always a funny character to watch. Scamander also has some brilliantly delivered jokes which are sort of passive-aggressive in their execution, but that's all part of his character. I do think the movie could have done with a little more comedy, but it's still pretty good. From a technical standpoint, I want to say how well I thought the movie mixed its tones. I mentioned earlier that at times the movie can be very childish and light to being very dark and adult. It's very difficult to mix tones like that in a movie, and I think David Yates does it brilliantly. The Catching the Beast storyline is the childish and light one, while the wizarding, politics and the Muggle KKK subplots house the more adult and dark themes. It never felt jarring though, which is a credit to the editing team and David Yates. I also mentioned how the movie never uses the Harry Potter theme except for the very start. I like that it didn't do that, but at the same time Fantastic Beasts seems to lack any memorable theme of its own. If it did have a theme, I must have totally missed it. It's a shame because I felt Scamander deserves to have a memorable theme tune, and it's sort of a staple of the Harry Potter world anyway, so yeah, the lack of a main theme was a bit disappointing. In terms of how the film's made, it is unquestionable that it resides in the Harry Potter universe. The colour palette is very flat and dim while also being rather vibrant and colourful at times. The movie begins with the Warner Brothers logo in the clouds, followed by the movie title. The score is of the same mood and the visual aesthetic and wardrobe is pretty much the same, even though Fantastic Beasts is set in 1920s New York and Harry Potter is set in 1990s Hogwarts. The costume and set design remains pretty much the same, given that Hogwarts is rather archaic anyway. We see the movie newspapers at the start, which give us a lot of background information on the extended universe, most notably about Grindelwald. These newspapers were abundant in Harry Potter, so there's a connection there. What I'm really getting at here is that there is literally no visible gap between Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts. The two movies fit together like Kanye and Kim, they just belong with each other. Overall, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is a very welcomed introduction to the extended universe of Harry Potter. As a standalone movie, I can't be certain if it is as good as I say it is. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, so I may be giving this movie lots of praise off the back of that. If you aren't a Harry Potter fan and you've seen the movie, let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. But Fantastic Beasts has some wonderful characters, some welcomed adult and darker themes, and a very interesting subplot. The villains of the movie are understandable and relatable, unlike Potter's Voldemort. It doesn't rely too heavily on its Harry Potter predecessor and seems to be able to stand on its own 2 feet. Some of you may be wondering why I haven't talked about the big twist, and it's simply because I don't want to. I want to leave it for people to see. All I'll say is I fucking loved it. There's some good comedy in the movie and a few nice touches to the writing developed by J.K. Rowling and wonderfully executed by David Yates. Fantastic Beasts certainly does not lose any of the magic of the original franchise. In fact, it just adds to it. It introduces lots of new magical wonders and I can't wait for the sequels. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them gets 4.5 frames out of 5. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Film Rant.